I have been getting more and more questions lately about tiny homes. I don't know if it's because people are getting kind of tired of this market and feeling like they can't compete, or if they just really are interested in that minimalist lifestyle. But hey, you asked, I'll answer. Happy to look into this for you, what it's like to build and live in a tiny home here in Clark County, Washington. Thank you for watching my channel. I appreciate you being here. Go ahead and throw me a like and hit subscribe. And I am putting out new videos every Thursday. So if you like the things that I'm talking about here on life and real estate in Southwest Washington, come on back for more later. People choose to live in tiny homes for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons is that they're very environmentally friendly. They have a small footprint. They can include solar panels, rainwater systems, and other eco-friendly amenities that can keep them from causing environmental harm or damage, right? Less energy consumption is another reason. Smaller homes just don't require as much energy to operate, so you can save on your bills big time. They are easier to clean. Cleaning a tiny house would be a lot less time consuming than cleaning a single family residential home. That in this area, home sizes are typically bigger than 1,500, 1,600 square feet. If I sell a 1,200 square foot house, I'm like, that's on the small side, So overall, you would be able to clean it so much faster and just a lot less maintenance. Maintaining a full-size home can require many different tasks, but with a smaller home, the upkeep just becomes a whole lot simpler. The new Washington regulation ESSB 5383 supports the development and adoption of tiny homes in many ways. I printed the definition of tiny houses because I couldn't memorize this. Tiny houses and tiny houses with wheels are to be considered in the state of Washington as a dwelling to be used as permanent housing with permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation, built in accordance with the state building code. So for the very first time, this differentiates tiny homes from recreational vehicles and other types of housing, allowing these structures their own category and the ability to be used as legal permanent residences in Washington state. I think a lot of the state laws have been catching up with the tiny home movement. So it's really interesting and great to see that Washington is coming along on this new movement of people living in tiny homes. There are two types of tiny homes. There are tiny homes on wheels, which are legally referred to as recreational vehicles or RVs, or there are tiny homes that are on foundations, which are legally recognized as being additional dwelling units or ADUs. If you are living in your tiny home that's an RV, you don't have to worry about building codes or zoning designations or building, code concerns. You just need to find a place to park it. So it's really easy to live in your tiny home if it has wheels on it. County code allows for accessory dwelling units no smaller than 150 square feet and no larger than 1,600 square feet, as long as they are constructed or mounted onto a foundation. The county views tiny houses on wheels as RVs, like we've said. RVs, motorhomes, travel trailers, they're not allowed for long-term occupancy in Clark County outside of RV parks. Once the wheels are removed, it becomes eligible for occupancy upon meeting permit requirements. Permit isn't required to own a tiny home, but it is necessary in order to inhabit the home long-term. Most counties and cities in the Pacific Northwest will only permit a structure that has been placed on a foundation. What does the permitting cost? $1,800 for the site plan review, $2,900 on average for impact fees, plus the cost of permitting, engineering, and materials to put the home on a legal foundation. For those located in Clark County but not within city jurisdiction, you are somewhat limited. Tiny homes may be permitted as a primary dwelling or a guest house, or you can go after a hardship affidavit. That's when a jurisdiction is flexible on its rules to ease the financial or medical burden of a family member. Rural areas often offer a hardship as a means to add an ADU on your property. Another option is to buy a house in the City of Vancouver. Build an ADU in the back and then rent out the ADU or the main house, live in the tiny home, rent out the main house, whatever you want to do. In the City of Vancouver jurisdiction, ADUs are currently allowed in all residential zones if the city's development standards, if you're meeting those standards. Here's a summarized list of what they refer to. ADUs can be attached or detached from the primary residence. The ADU can be 800 square feet or up to 50% of the primary dwelling unit's total square footage, whichever is less. From the view of the front of the lot, the ADU cannot comprise of more than 50% of the total facade area of the primary structure in the outbuildings. The ADU must be architecturally compatible with the primary dwelling unit. It can't stick out like a sore thumb. Turns out that the city of Camas is pretty ADU friendly as well. Camas allows accessory dwelling units in all zones where residential uses are allowed. The bulk of Camas zoning is residential. They also have some requirements that need to be met. The ADU cannot project beyond the front of the building of that line of the existing residence. A detached ADU may not be closer than 5 feet to the side of the rear property lines. Also, it cannot be closer than 20 feet to a side of a lot line if it's along the street side or a corner lot. An ADU must have at least one on-site parking spot available. It must be architecturally compatible with the primary residence, and it must be connected to public water and sewer, even if the existing home is connected to an on-site septic well or on-site septic system and a well. One of the dwelling units on-site must be owner-occupied for a minimum of 6 months out of the year. Tiny homes typically cost between $40,000 and $100,000, so it's much more affordable than a traditional home. You can pay someone to build it, or you can build it yourself. Buying a lot is what's going to cost you more. It's going to be, at least $100,000 or more. And I have included a link to a property search that I've set up if you're interested in some land options. If you're buying a lot to put a tiny home on, just do your research. Know the zoning laws that are associated with that area to make sure that your project is allowable. Clark County's Geographical Information System service on their website is super helpful. It is a great place to look up information that you need to determine if your project is going to be feasible. I've also included a link to the Clark County GIS system in the description. If you're going through the ADU process, if you're interested in finding out whether this is a feasible solution for you, here is a couple of things to consider, especially when you're starting the process and looking at raw land. Is the lot able to connect to the city sewer, or are you going to have to put in a septic system? What is the source of water? Is it in an area that you can connect to city water, or are you going to have to dig a well? Road. There might be a way to access the lot from like the main road, but how are you going to get from the main road to your building site, or where you're going to put it? And what is that going to cost you? And are there going to be any environmental concerns? What's the county going to say about stormwater? If you're putting in concrete, do you need to have a permit to put in a road, even if it's just gravel? Just all questions to ask. And actually, Clark County's land use line is super helpful. They have an email address that you can just ask questions to via email, and they usually get back to you or give you a call within a day, which is really, really nice, especially when you're looking at lots that you're potentially interested in to build on. Power to the lot. Where is the closest power line? So does the neighbor have power at their lot? And then what is it going to cost you to bring the power over to your lot, to bury the line, to put in a transformer? What are the permitting costs going to be? That's a great question for Clark County. And I don't know whether it costs any different for a tiny home versus a single family residence, like a more typical structure. And impact fees. If there's no current residential dwelling on a property, then you would have to pay an impact fee to put one there. So like if you're looking at a lot and it already has a manufactured home on it, then the person who put up that manufactured home already paid the impact fee, so you should not have to pay it. So that's actually an advantage. I don't know what it would cost you to dispose of a manufactured home that's on a property, but if it's less than the cost of the impact fee, then you might still be, that might be a viable option for you. When I am setting up searches for people for property in general, I just keep a couple things in mind and kind of coach my clients along in the process. One is that lots just take longer to sell, and so a lot's days on market doesn't really correlate to an ability to negotiate the sales price down. They just take longer. There's a much smaller percentage of people who are going to be building homes versus those who are looking to purchase existing homes. So the pool of buyers is just a lot smaller. You need to look at the zoning regulations and whether they allow for tiny homes, and work with Clark County or the City of Vancouver to make sure that that's going to be okay. It sounds like the City of Vancouver is pretty flexible on the subject. You need to be aware of HOAs. So most times if you're buying a lot that's rural, there's not going to be an HOA, but if it's something that's been developed sooner, or not sooner, but if it's something that's been developed more recently, then yes, it might have an HOA involved, and the HOA might have rules and regulations about tiny homes being put on that property. And then again, just looking at local ordinances to make sure that they are friendly towards tiny homes. So if you had a tiny home built in Clark County, I'd love to hear from you. I don't know very many people who have done this, and I'm very interested in it. And it seems like there are quite a few resources available here locally, like Wolf Industries is one that this is what they do for their businesses, help people put up tiny homes in this area. So definitely recommend reaching out to them. All right, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.